Hello everybody, this is Dr. Hart, and this little presentation is designed to help give you a preview of what we're going to be doing next week, which is to do an observational study. We're going to be doing two different kinds of observational studies. One is called a naturalistic study, and the other one is called a controlled observational study. And so I hope that you'll view this. It'll help to prepare for doing that activity next week. Now, some important elements of human behavior study. The first thing that I want to emphasize here is that human behavior studies are rooted in the literature that's rooted in previous research. Human behavior study is evolutionary, rarely revolutionary, which means that we take things step by step. We establish a scientific truth at one stage, and then that scientific truth, if you will, becomes the stepping stone for moving on to the next research question. And then once we establish an answer for that research question, we use that as the basis for moving on to the next research question. So we're going to be looking at what the textbook says about a couple of important issues that will be opportunities for us to observe when we go out onto the campus. We're going to be talking about adolescence and leisure, and then we're going to be looking at adolescence and social media. I think both of those are going to be pretty readily apparent as we go out onto the campus. And those are going to be probably the most common activities that we're going to be able to observe. Now, the two different kinds of observations. One is called a naturalistic observation, and the other is called a controlled observation. A naturalistic observation is when the researcher simply goes out with a little bit in mind about what they're going to be looking at. In this case, you're going to be looking at adolescents and their leisure activities and adolescents and their social media activities. But other than a general idea about what it is that you're going to be looking at, there's no preconceived notions, there's no definite thing that you're going to be looking at. You're going to be doing this naturalistic observation and simply be taking notes. And you're going to be writing down your observations. You can do that on a notepad, you can do that on your smartphone, you can do that on an iPad or a tablet, but whatever it is that you happen to be using. Now, a characteristic of human behavior studies is that they start with a research question. And in this case, for the naturalistic observation, we're going to be looking at this question. What behaviors do adolescents exhibit in structured and unstructured settings in a medium-sized private liberal arts university in Ecuador? Once again, what behaviors, and that can be leisure activities or social media activities, what behaviors do adolescents exhibit in structured and unstructured settings in a medium-sized private liberal arts university in Ecuador? Now, we'll be looking at that question on Tuesday. You'll be going out and collecting some data. I'll explain a little bit more about that in a minute. And then on Thursday, we're going to take what we found out in the naturalistic study, and we're going to focus it down a little bit more and use a controlled observation. Now, with a controlled observation, you usually have a checklist of some kind, okay? And what you're going to be doing is counting behaviors. And we're going to be focusing on some very specific behaviors that we're going to be learning about on Tuesday when we do the naturalistic observation. The research question for the controlled observation is going to be, what are the most frequent blank behaviors? And in this case, I think it's probably going to be leisure and social media behaviors exhibited by adolescent students at a medium-sized private university in Ecuador. Okay? So those are the research questions. Let's say a little bit about what the textbook says about adolescence and leisure. because remember, we base our studies on the literature. Okay? So one of the topics that is covered in the textbook is something called affect. Affect is our emotions, our affections, our emotions. And in the textbook, they talk about the affect of adolescence with and without friends. And in the textbook, you're going to see that this dynamic between friends, girlfriends and boyfriends, boyfriends with boyfriends, girlfriends with girlfriends, and so on. One of the areas of research has been the feelings that adolescent males and adolescent females have when they are with their friends and when they are without their friends. Okay, very important research question. Another research question is the whole issue of flow. This idea that we're in a sport, or when we're in a dance, or we're in some other form of physical activity where we get this sense of flow. We're at a really high level of performance. Sometimes players and they're experiencing a sense of flow feel almost like they're outside of themselves, that they are observing themselves. Okay? And this is quite commonly developed in adolescents who are involved in athletic activities. So there might be some athletic activities going on around campus, and that might be something that you might want to observe, as if these people seem to show some examples of flow. Another question is extracurricular participation. Is that good for students, or is that bad for students and adolescents? Like, for instance, we have at least one athletic activity going on very frequently on campus here, and that's the football, the soccer games in the soccer pitch. But we also have some athletic activities going on in the Coliseo as well. Now, those are structured activities. These are more unstructured leisure time activities. These can be simply hanging around Paseo, very unstructured. Or it can be shopping. Or it can be simply lying around in the shade. Or it can be sitting, having a cafecita in the commons area. So it's a wide variety of different kinds of unstructured leisure activities. One of the theories about unstructured leisure activity is called the routine activity theory, which basically proposes that the less structured the activity, the more opportunity for problem behavior. Typical times for unstructured leisure time are time after school or between classes. And then also there's a whole question about promoting positive youth development through leisure activities. So I don't know if any of you are involved in Boy Scouting or Girl Scouting, but there are those activities, and those are viewed as activities that can help develop positive youth development. Churches can also be involved in positive youth development as well with relatively unstructured activities. Now, another area that you might want to do some research on through these observations is the area of adolescence and social media, which we've all heard a lot about. You could observe the use of smartphones, you could observe the use of iPads and other tablets. You could observe video games. There may be an opportunity to observe controversial media content. I'm not sure if people will share that with you, but that might come up as a possibility. Another topic in the literature about adolescence and social media, which you may have heard about, is the whole issue of social media addiction. So people, for instance, who simply cannot stay off of Facebook, or people who simply cannot stay off of Twitter. That's a pretty hot topic right now. And then finally, there's the whole issue of adolescence and social media and adolescents as consumers through social media. So We have people who buy things through Amazon. We have people who buy and download films. We have people who buy things in stores based on what they've seen on social media. So it is possible, like for instance, I have been thinking about maybe sending one or two of our teams over to Paseo to observe some behavior over there, and there may be some opportunity to see some interaction between social media and adolescents as consumers. Now, you're going to be collecting naturalistic data, as I said, in roughly about the last 35 to 45 minutes of our class number 3. In this case, it's going to be Tuesdays. And once again, the idea is that you simply go out in an unstructured way, take some notes. I'm going to ask you to come back for the last roughly 15 minutes of that class session. And we're going to talk about what are some of the most important elements that seem to emerge out of those observations. Then from those most important elements that seem to emerge out of the naturalistic observations, we're going to develop a controlled observation form, and that's going to be for our controlled observation phase of the study. On the following class session, you're going to go out and you're going to collect controlled observation data for roughly about 45 minutes. Then once again, you're going to come back to the class. We're going to look at what you counted up in terms of behaviors, and then we'll discuss that and we'll see if we can reach some conclusions, okay? So I hope you found this presentation helpful, and I'm looking forward to working with you next week. Bye now.